Hey, I'm Ossie from Three Monkey Solderless, home of the world's best cables for your pedal board. We got the DC, nice little shiny connectors, and we got the audio, also quite shiny with all kinds of colors. So check us out at 3monkeysolderless.com. You just screw them on. There's no soldering. There's no must. There's no mess. Anyway, so we're back, and today's going to be a little short. It's the holiday weekend, so I've pre-recorded this before escaping. I have escaped my zoo. Now, anyway, I'm in the room, and I thought that for what we would do is just maybe preview something to, as the progression goes on of figuring out this sound. Last week, we did fair warning, a little bit of fair warning stuff, and I played around with an EQ in front of the amplifier to kind of give it a frown and cut out some top end before getting into the amplifier. And I'm finding now it's starting to make sense to me. Whereas before, sort of Eddie's frown didn't really make sense to me, right? It was a guy who was like, hey, I hate mid-range. Yet there, it looks like, well, is that mid-range? It seems to be a lot of mid-range. But I really think what he was doing, maybe, this is all maybes. Everything I say is a maybe. And I just use my own experience in my own mind as to how things may or may not have happened. There are no definitive answers. And if people differ with me, that's how it should be. But anyway, I think he was doing that to kind of make his sound a little bit more cohesive. As I find that the sort of like way too much top end, it starts to sound like, it's not really full. It starts to sound very two-dimensional as opposed to three-dimensional for some reason. So cutting a little bit of top end before the amplifier, I think, makes a lot of sense as, it's easier to do there than it is afterwards. It sounds more natural. On top of that, I think that the frequency range in this sort of frown is in the exact area of some of the chords that he's playing to create this like synthesized, harmonized kind of sound. So what I found, I've been talking with some other people about this, particularly one. And, what's really interesting is, I'm thinking his guitar really sounds more to me like a synth in those early days, something like that. Now, I was cruising around on YouTube and I found this video of Dweezil Zappa, who was remixing, the old Deep Purple stuff. So he was doing, I don't know, like Space Truckin' or something like that. But he was isolating the Hammond, right? The Hammond organ on those early Deep Purple records, which was just, that was an insane sound. And how distorted the Hammond sounded, right? And Eddie, I know he loved Deep Purple. I mean, I've there's videos of him playing Deep Purple stuff. I mean, he studied it. I think he really loved Deep Purple. I mean, maybe there was something. Where's my drink? Maybe there was something with Blackmore or whatever it is. I don't care about all that stuff. I think Eddie being a keyboard player, a piano player. Van Halen even had a keyboard player in it back. I guess I don't know whether it was when it was Mammoth or whatever it was, but there was a keyboard player. There's no way that Eddie's ear was not influenced by those sounds and trying to make his guitar sound more like that. He was very unique in that way in what he wanted to do, right? He was trying to make, I think, his guitar sound not on purpose, but sound more like what he liked. And I think these B3s are the thing. So anyway, when you kind of cut down on some of these mids, or rather cut down on some of these highs, you kind of get a little bit more emphasis, right? So I got the guitar, the amp's all set up, and I'm going through, an EQ with a little frown there. And we've got, the Echoplex and all that stuff on. But let's just really quickly just go straight into the amp through the EQ and just listen to the differences. So the EQ is out right now, right? And we're going to think of this now as not just for fair warning, but let's say for Van Halen 1, right? So this is the way, the Marshmallow sounds, just like pretty much just straight in. So let me mute the mic a little bit so you can hear what the difference is. So let me mute this for a second. So that's the chord that I'm sort of like thinking of, right? I think I lost something in the mix. I think maybe the feedback thing came on. Yeah, okay. All right, now I'm going to put on the EQ. I think it's subtle, but it really cleans up the sound a bunch. All right, so that's one thing. So the EQ thing, going to look into that, like really dialing in the EQ to really emphasize that sort of, maybe B3 imitation. So the other thing that was interesting, I thought that helped with it is, all right, I was listening again to some of the scratch tracks of Don Landy. Or maybe it was Don Landy or whatever, but there was an outtake I think we did once before of Jamie's Crying. So it's a different sort of take, and it offers some interesting insights maybe into how the whole thing was sort of like set up maybe. So let's take a quick listen to, what I wanted you to hear and see what we can surmise out of that. So let's play it. Here comes the copyright strike. Right there. All right, I think that should do for getting a nice solid copyright strike, but who cares, right? So the interesting part was this little section where you can hear the slapback. So let's listen to that real quick. Right? So now, you might think of that as like a pre-delay to, the reverb, but to me that sounds like an Echoplex. It doesn't sound like a studio delay. It has this little bit of a wobble to it. It's like almost springy. So I was like, that's got to be, his Echoplex in the one setting that he's got. So dug out the Echoplex, which, I don't think you need an actual Echoplex. And this one sounds like the dryer is running when you turn it on. So it's a total pain in the butt. So I don't think you really need the Echoplex, but just this slap. So let's plug into this sort of setup. So we're going from now the guitar from the guitar EQ into the Phase 90, into the Echoplex, and then into the Marshmallow, right? So here we go. Right? Listen, and then we can, add a tiny bit of reverb to it if needed, but so that it has that, that sort of country slap to it. So let's here we go. Okay, now we got both working, right? I also think that little slap, right, when you're holding the chord, it gives it a little bit of a chorusy kind of sound. So that might be, that might be part of the sound, right, in a sense, that it really almost adds like when we were playing around with the Eventide, right? That quick slap when we had the delay out a few milliseconds, right? It was like, I don't know, 18 milliseconds of delay on the delay out. When you combine the two, it kind of created this really interesting space, right? And a little bit of a chorusy kind of sound, even when the harmonizer wasn't used. So, this is sort of, you can look at it. If you want to make choruses, a short delay can do that, right? Also flanges. So delays can do all these things. So this is sort of like maybe the use of, in my mind, more so than anything else, of the Echoplex. So let's listen to how it affects sort of like, let's say like those chords that are in Running with the Devil, because I think those are, really they sound like, B3 sort of like sounds to me. Not exactly, but they remind me of them. So let's listen to that. I just think it adds like this kind of swirl to the sound. It makes it a little bit more interesting. Let's and also being, that we cut a lot of the low end out of the amp, right? If we were to add, let's say, some back in, or rather cut a lot of high end out of the amp. If we were to add some back in, let's say, through like an exciter, adding, harmonics to the original sound, we could get some. Like that sounds more. Much more. I don't know how to explain it. It just sounds much more intense, like it's swirling. It sounds more like the record, I think, this sort of short little slap that he's got going on everything. Uh-oh. That was weird. I shouldn't have said anything. We had an explosion. That was weird. The Echoplex gods have spoken. It is time it's time to stop, I guess, before the studio catches fire. I just set this stuff up pretty quickly, so I probably overloaded one of my circuits in here. So anyway, what if we drop down the mix a little bit? So that's all the way down. That's as low as it'll go. That sounds pretty close to the actual echo that's on the, right? Let's bring it up a little bit. Okay. I don't want to tempt fate much longer with the minor blowout we just had. That was crazy. Anyway, so it's that's enough for today. I gotta go and look at the circuit card. Look at the what you call it, the fuse box, and see what the heck is going on while we blew out. So anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time, and we'll continue with all this stuff.